In a valley where the canopy soared hundreds of feet overhead, Daniel set off early one morning with his pack of instruments and rations. He ventured beyond his usual perimeter, deeper into the unknown. The hush of dawn enveloped everything, dew clinging to broad fronds and twinkling like stars in a green sky. He carefully stepped over tangled roots, scanning his surroundings for signs of new life. He paused now and then to note the colors of flowers, or to collect small samples of spore-laden air. The deeper he ventured, the more alive the jungle seemed. Eventually, he reached the banks of a winding river, carved from glossy black stone. Tall trees, with bark that seemed to shimmer in alternating patterns, lined the water's edge. Their leaves, shaped like alien sails, cast mottled shadows across Daniel's face. Taking careful steps on the smooth stones, he observed how the fish-like creatures beneath the surface changed hue in unison, shimmering in a dance that mesmerized him. Yet, as he marveled at the life around him, he felt a ripple of unease pass through the air, a subtle shift that set his instincts on alert. It began as a hush among the leaves, as though even the wind grew afraid to stir. The insects, which only moments before flitted about in cheerful patterns, abruptly disappeared into hollows and crevices. Daniel crouched, his heart thumping. He recalled from the data he had read, the dark talons possessed camouflage so advanced, they seemed to vanish entirely. There were only fleeting signs, a faint distortion in the air, a slight bend of light around their exoskeletal forms. He had never encountered them up close, but the feeling was unmistakable. A predator was near. Summoning his courage, he slowly lifted the scanning device from his belt and activated it. Waves of faint energy pulsed across the clearing. It was an invention of his own design, one that scrambled the special chromatophores on a creature's skin. With it, he hoped to gain at least a glimpse of any hidden adversaries. The device hummed. A soft glow enveloped the area, and Daniel heard a distant hiss, sharp and guttural, that sent a chill down his spine. For a split second, he saw the outline of something lurking along the tree line, something with claws that glinted darkly. Then, just as quickly, it vanished again. Before he could decide whether to flee or investigate further, he heard a cry, unlike any he had heard before. It was a Celarian voice, melodic even in its terror. The sound cut through the humid air, and Daniel felt his chest tighten. Someone was in danger. With no time for caution, he sprinted through the foliage, weaving around luminous tree trunks, each breath ragged. The cry echoed again, weaker now, calling for help. He followed it to a small clearing, where a narrow beam of dappled sunlight illuminated a Celarian figure dressed in pale, flowing garments. Her long silver hair tumbled across her shoulders, and an ornate band of shimmering crystals rested upon her brow. She was cornered, pressed against a broad trunk as three slithering shapes advanced upon her, dark talons. Daniel's eyes widened at their imposing forms, each creature twice as tall as a man, moving with predatory grace. Their scales shimmered, half-transparent, blending with the greenery like ghosts. The Celarian woman tried to summon a soft golden glow from her fingertips, a sign of Celarian telekinetic or empathic abilities, but it flickered weakly and failed, evidence of exhaustion or injury. One of the creatures lunged, sharp talons slicing the air. Daniel didn't think. He reacted. He pressed the device's activation switch to its maximum power, unleashing a crackling pulse that made the environment hum with energy. A bright flash revealed the beasts in their true forms, an unsettling sight of spiked limbs and razor teeth. Momentarily disoriented, the dark talons hissed and stepped back, blinking their large, glassy eyes. Daniel seized the chance. He dashed forward, grabbing the Celarian woman's wrist. She looked at him, her eyes wide and terrified, but also filled with a strange relief. He motioned for her to run. Together, they sprinted away, pushing through vines, forging through dense undergrowth. The device, still whirring, sent pulses that made it harder for the dark talons to disappear, but they pursued with dogged persistence, unleashing guttural snarls from behind. The chase was breathless, a blur of green leaves whipping past, hearts pounding in unison. Daniel's mind racing for a plan. Up ahead, he spotted a cluster of tall, twisting trees, their thick branches forming a natural barrier. Without pausing, he and the Celarian woman scrambled between the trunks and came out on a higher ridge overlooking a ravine. The dark talons, momentarily losing their line of sight, parted into a formation, their heads turning, scanning for the pair. Daniel adjusted the device, biting his lip as he remembered the short range. He needed to deliver a decisive shock to drive them away. Summoning his courage, he turned up the frequency once more, causing the air to crackle with electric energy. The beasts hissed and retreated several steps, their camouflage flickering as though short-circuited. In the confusion, Daniel and the Celarian woman turned and ran again, leaving the clearing behind. Eventually, the roars and hisses of the dark talons faded into the distance. Out of breath, the pair found refuge in the shelter of an enormous root system. They collapsed against the broad trunk, hearts still pounding. That was how Daniel Carter first laid eyes upon Princess Virella of the Celarians. Unbeknownst to him, their fates were bound in that moment of shared desperation. An encounter that would shape the future of two very different peoples. Princess Virella, with her crystalline band of royal lineage, breathed heavily as she leaned against the gnarled root. Her robes, once pristine, were now torn and dirty. Still, there was an undeniable regal grace about her. Daniel offered her water from his canteen, and she drank, eyes cautious. He spoke gently, explaining who he was, how he had come to Voralia Prime for research, and how he had been following rumors of the Dark Talons for months. His words tumbled out nervously, but her gaze never left him. "Thank you," she finally said, her voice carrying a soft, musical resonance. "I owe you my life." Few have dared to face the Dark Talons so openly. Daniel felt the tension drain from his body. "I acted on instinct, couldn't just stand by." He paused, looking at her. "You're injured." She lifted her arm, revealing a shallow gash. He reached into his pack for a medical kit, retrieving a disinfectant. She allowed him to carefully clean and dress the wound. Up close, her features radiated a quiet luminescence, a trait common among Celarians, hinting at their close ties to the life energy of their planet. She spoke again, more softly. "I am Virella, daughter of King Mafares, chosen heir of the Celarian people." A jolt of recognition flickered in Daniel's eyes. He knew of King Mafares, revered leader of the Celarians. What was the princess doing alone in this remote corner of the jungle, pursued by some of Voralia Prime's deadliest predators? He suppressed the questions swirling in his mind, choosing instead to carefully bandage her arm. She winced, but did not pull away. When he finished, she breathed a gentle thanks, then looked at him with a curious tilt of her head. "I could not sense the presence of the Dark Talons until it was nearly too late," she said. "My empathic powers failed me. One moment, the jungle felt serene. The next, they were upon me." Daniel nodded. "They have specialized camouflage, some kind of advanced bioelectric field that dampens telepathic and empathic detection. My device is designed to disrupt it, though the effect is temporary." She looked at him as though examining a puzzle. "That technology, is it from Earth?" "In part," he replied, "but I've developed modifications based on my research here. I suspected the Dark Talons' camouflage was vulnerable to certain frequencies." Princess Virella regarded him with renewed respect. "You are braver than many I know, and certainly more resourceful than the stories of your people suggest." Daniel flushed. "That's generous, Your Highness. Though I'm just doing my job as a xenobiologist, I had no idea I'd end up protecting a princess in the process." She offered a faint but genuine smile. "And I had no idea I would be rescued by a human scientist who wields technology as skillfully as any Celarian warrior might wield a blade." They sat in silence for a time, letting the adrenaline subside. In the distance, the jungle chorus returned, an orchestra of chittering insects and rustling leaves, as if nature itself breathed a sigh of relief. Virella closed her eyes, sensing the area around them to check if the dark talons had truly retreated. "The beasts have gone," she said softly. "But these jungles are treacherous. I must return to the royal city. My father will be gravely worried." Then she looked up at Daniel. "Will you accompany me?" "Surely. You cannot be expected to walk these paths unguarded now that the dark talons know your presence." He considered the question. Part of him wanted to keep to his mission, to gather more data and maintain an observer's neutrality. However, the princess's eyes, a reflective silver tinged with vulnerability, stirred something in him. Moreover, if he escorted her to the city, he might glean insights into Celarian culture and perhaps secure more permanent permission to continue his research. And beyond all that, he simply did not want to leave her alone, not after witnessing how perilous these wilds could be. "I'll go with you," he said. "I owe it to you and your father to ensure your safe return." She smiled again, and he felt as though something profound passed between them, a thread of connection that might foretell events yet to unfold. The journey back to the Celarian capital was no small undertaking. Virella led Daniel through hidden trails where mossy stones glowed beneath the footsteps of those who trod upon them, illuminating the path in soft pulses of color. The vines that draped from towering branches bore luminescent blossoms that opened only at twilight, filling the air with gentle glimmers like floating lanterns. Daniel was enchanted by the living tapestry around him. Yet, he remained vigilant, scanning the surroundings with his device, wary of any lurking threat. At one point, they crossed a series of naturally formed bridges, made from the interwoven roots of colossal, ancient trees. Below them lay a deep ravine, cloaked in mist. From that mist emerged the faint calls of creatures unknown, echoing with an otherworldly reverberation. Virella trod carefully, occasionally glancing over her shoulder to ensure Daniel followed without incident. Each step tested his resolve and balance. They made camp that evening beside a tranquil pond, fed by a small waterfall. Though the water glowed faintly, Daniel tested it with his kit to ensure it was safe to drink. After confirming, they both drank and replenished their canteens over a modest meal of dried fruits, nuts, and rations from Daniel's pack. They spoke more openly. Virella shared the reason she had been in the jungle, an annual celestial rite of meditation that some members of the royal family undertook to attune themselves to Voralia Prime's planetary essence. However, she had strayed too far from her usual path, unwisely trusting that her empathic powers would warn her of any danger. Daniel, for his part, recounted his life on Earth, how he had grown fascinated with alien biology after the Terrans made their first interstellar contacts. He spoke of his childhood, reading tales of far-off galaxies, dreaming of someday stepping on worlds like Voralia Prime. Their conversation flowed smoothly, punctuated by the melodic splashes of water. Though the hour grew late, neither felt quite ready to sleep. Eventually, the long day caught up with them, and they settled in to rest under the watchful glow of a wide moon. The last sound Daniel heard before drifting off was the gentle sigh of the jungle, the rustling of leaves, and Princess Virella's breathing, which had steadied into a peaceful rhythm. He drifted into dreams of swirling stars, unaware that this night marked the beginning of a bond destined to change the course of his life. The capital city of the Celarian Zatharine, as Daniel soon learned it was called, rose in harmonious splendor where the jungle parted. Instead of clearing away the lush growth to build, the Celarians had woven their buildings among the trunks and branches, shaping living structures with shimmering crystals, all alive with the energy of the planet. Towering spires formed from delicate, iridescent materials glowed in pastel hues at dawn, while wide balconies extended from branches as though grown from the same primordial trunk. Water ran through channels carved in glistening patterns, weaving through the city in slender waterfalls, and connecting the various levels were floating platforms of luminous crystal, guided telekinetically by skilled Celarian engineers. To Daniel's untrained eye, it appeared as a realm out of legend. He followed Virella across a series of gracefully arching walkways that guided them from one massive living platform to another. Citizens paused in their daily tasks to stare at the sight of a human, walking side by side with the princess. Their expressions revealed polite curiosity, though a few seemed wary or even disapproving. Virella, head held high, displayed royal composure, nodding in greeting to her people, who bowed in return. At the city's heart stood the royal palace, an architectural marvel that melded seamlessly into the central trunk of the largest tree Daniel had ever seen. The trunk itself was as wide as a small mountain, and from its bark emerged crystalline windows, balconies, and archways, elegant sconces of living vines twined around pillars, producing a steady, soft radiance. As they approached the grand entrance, a set of towering doors parted silently, revealing a magnificent hall carved from living wood and crystal. Rows of Celarian guards, clad in plated organic armor that shimmered with subtle rainbow refractions, lined the path. Virella guided Daniel past them, offering reassuring nods when she sensed their suspicion. King Mefaris awaited them at the far end of the hall. He stood tall, clad in robes woven from the same shimmering crystals that adorned Virella's brow. His hair, silver like his daughter's, but laced with strands of violet, flowed past his shoulders, and his presence exuded both serenity and undeniable authority. Attendants whispered among themselves as Daniel and Virella drew near. Virella bowed respectfully before her father, speaking in Celarian. Daniel caught only fragments of the language, gleaning something about gratitude and rescue. The king's gaze flicked to Daniel, golden eyes observant. Virella switched to the Terran tongue for Daniel's sake. "Father," she said, "this is Daniel Carter, a xenobiologist from Earth. He saved my life from the Dark Talons and aided me in returning safely to Zatharan. I owe him a debt beyond measure." King Mefaris inclined his head. His voice, though resonant with regal gravity, carried a gentle note. "You have performed a great service, Daniel Carter," he said in carefully articulated Terran. "I sense an honorable spirit in you, one who protects life even when the odds are dire. In saving my daughter, you have offered me a gift I can never fully repay. Please, be welcome in our city, and let no door be closed to you." Daniel bowed in return, his heart pounding. "Your Majesty, I am humbled by your words. I only did what anyone should do in such a circumstance." An appreciative murmur spread through the attendants. The king's expression remained serene, but there was a hint of relief in his eyes. "Nevertheless, your act carries tremendous weight," he said. "The Celarian people have ancient traditions, and one in particular decrees that when a member of the royal family is rescued from mortal peril, we owe a sacred debt. We call this the Covenant of Valreen." Daniel listened intently, though he had never heard of such a tradition. Virella glanced at him, then back to her father, mild concern in her eyes. The king continued. "The law states that the debt may be repaid through the offering of the most precious gift our lineage can provide in times past. That has included granting entire provinces or forging alliances sealed by binding vows. However, in the case of an heir to the throne, the tradition is more personal." A hush fell across the hall. Virella bowed her head, understanding the gravity of her father's announcement. Daniel felt a ripple of tension, uncertain what the king's words implied. At last, the monarch spoke, his voice resonating with solemn deliberation. "Daniel Carter, you shall be offered the hand of Princess Virella in marriage, should you both wish it so." Daniel's mind spun as the king's declaration sank in. Had he heard correctly? The Celarian princess, the one he had rescued mere days ago, was now to be offered in marriage as a repayment of a sacred debt. He looked at Virella, whose cheeks bore a faint flush. She met his gaze, and he sensed a tumult of emotions within her, a mixture of gratitude, duty, and uncertainty. The assembled court seemed equally stunned, though no one dared to contradict the king. King Mefaris lifted a hand to still the rising whispers. "The Covenant of Valreen was established when our ancestors vowed to honor any who risk life and limb to safeguard our bloodline. We do not force our children into unwilling unions. It is, tradition for the princess and her rescuer to spend time together, ensuring the bond is acceptable to both. Should love blossom, the marriage will be an event of joy and unity. If not, we shall find another means to honor the debt. But by law, the offer must stand. Daniel swallowed hard. All he could manage was a respectful bow. Your Majesty, I'm honored, though I can scarcely comprehend the magnitude of this. I hold your traditions in the highest regard and would never wish to disrespect your culture. But this is unexpected. The king's gaze softened. I understand. Come, let us speak of this in private. Without further fanfare, King Mafaris led Daniel and Virella down a series of gilded corridors, leaving the throng of courtiers behind. The halls led deeper into the palace, past gardens filled with living crystals that produced gentle chimes when stirred by the breeze, and past doorways embellished with ancient Celarian script. Finally, they entered a modest, beautifully adorned chamber with carved wooden seats and large windows that looked out onto the city below. When they were seated, King Mafaris spoke more candidly. Daniel, I sense your apprehension. The Covenant of Valrine is a tradition we Celarians hold dear, for it signifies the precious nature of life and the gratitude owed to those who protect it. The hand of my daughter is not offered lightly. Virella is precious to me in ways a father can hardly express. But the law is clear, and so is the debt. If you do not wish to follow this path, we shall respect it. Yet we shall still endeavor to honor you in some other grand manner. Daniel exhaled, torn between relief and confusion. Virella, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Father, Daniel has shown great bravery and kindness. I am not opposed to the idea of learning more about him, but I also respect that his people have their own customs and beliefs. King Mafaris inclined his head. So be it. We shall take this slowly, allowing you both to explore whether a bond might form. In the meantime, Daniel, you are welcome in Zatharine. We shall grant you a place in our palace, or, if you prefer, a private residence in the city, where you can continue your research and become acquainted with our ways. Though still overwhelmed, Daniel nodded. The possibility of bridging two worlds, forging an alliance that could reshape human-Celarian relations, both thrilled and unsettled him. Thank you, Your Majesty, he said. For now, perhaps I'll remain in the palace, so that I may learn from you and your people and decide how best to approach this situation. A sense of resolution settled over the room. The king stood, offering his hand to Daniel. Let it be so. Rest now, and when you are ready, my daughter will guide you around Zatharine. Our scholars will help with whatever research you desire. Daniel bowed deeply, his mind swirling with the enormity of what had just transpired. Virella gave a gentle nod, acknowledging this precarious new step in their journey, as well as the unspoken possibility that their entwined futures might hold more significance than either of them could have predicted. Days turned into weeks. Daniel found himself immersed in Celarian culture, ensconced in one of the palace's guest suites. The room's walls were formed of living wood that pulsed gently, reflecting the occupant's mood, and crystals embedded in the ceiling cast shifting patterns of light that soothed the mind at rest. Each morning, a Celarian steward brought him a selection of fruit and delicacies native to Voralia Prime, sweet green slices of a melon-like plant that glistened with dew, bright blue berries that tasted of honey and mint. Princess Virella, true to her father's promise, visited him frequently, offering tours of the city's wonders. They floated on platforms above the broad canopy, soared past magnificent waterfalls, and visited places where Celarian artisans shaped living crystals into melodic instruments. Each new sight astounded Daniel. In turn, he showed her images and data from Earth photographs of towering skyscrapers, videos of Terran wildlife, snippets of music from human cultures spanning centuries. Their conversations ranged from idle chatter to deep philosophical musings, bridging the gulf between their two worlds. Virella proved eager to learn about human science, and Daniel shared some of his knowledge regarding biology, genetics, and ecology. In return, Virella spoke of the Celarians' profound bond with Voralia Prime's natural rhythms, explaining how empathy was woven into their very being, allowing them to sense and harmonize with the planet's pulse. Gradually, the tension around the marriage proposal softened. Though the possibility remained present, they found themselves exploring the simpler joys of friendship. One evening, while strolling in a hanging garden awash in lavender moonlight, Virella confided that she felt guilt over the burden placed upon Daniel. "Our tradition is sacred," she said softly, "but I worry that we have thrust too much upon you. Marriage is not merely a bond of two souls, it is a bridge between families, worlds, destinies." Daniel paused near a bed of flowering vines, their petals shimmering with faint phosphorescence. "I won't deny that it weighs on me," he said. "Yet, I can't ignore what I feel when I'm around you. There's a connection, something beyond gratitude or mere curiosity. And while I don't want to rush, I also can't pretend it doesn't exist." Her eyes glistened, reflecting the moon's glow. "I sense it too," she admitted, voice soft as the hush of leaves. "Perhaps that is why I do not entirely shy away from the covenant's demands. Our fates, it seems, are more intertwined than either of us imagined." With the night air thick with the scent of blossoms, they moved on, neither pressing the issue further. Still, the gentle closeness they shared spoke volumes. Despite the blossoming kinship with Virella, Daniel remained a scientist at heart. He spent hours in a Celarian laboratory, invited by the royal scholars to share knowledge. The lab, perched on a high platform near the palace, was open to the sky, allowing the swirling hues of the Celarian atmosphere to illuminate the workbenches. Delicate instruments of crystal and living vines integrated seamlessly with Daniel's more mechanical Terran technology. Together with a team of Celarian researchers, Daniel studied the intricate camouflage of the dark talons. He hoped to find a safer means of containing or repelling them, so that the jungles would be less fraught with peril. They discovered that the creatures harbored specialized biocircuitry under their scales, interacting with natural electromagnetic fields to bend light around their bodies. Their savage behavior, however, seemed tied to a corrupted form of territorial aggression, possibly exacerbated by changes in the planet's environment. Eager to gather fresh data, Daniel proposed an expedition back into the wild. Virella, though initially wary of returning to the place where she had nearly lost her life, volunteered to accompany him. She insisted that with Celarian scouts and improved scanning devices, the group could better protect themselves. Moreover, she felt a responsibility as princess and future ruler to understand the true nature of these creatures that threatened the safety of her people. King Mafaris granted permission, dispatching a small retinue of elite guards to ensure Virella's protection. He trusted Daniel's expertise, but would not risk losing his daughter again. The expedition set off at dawn, traveling in sleek skimmers that glided over the jungle canopy. From that vantage point, the horizon unfurled in emerald expanses broken only by waterfalls cascading from towering cliffs. The air shimmered with faint breezes, carrying the scent of moss and unseen blooms. On board the lead skimmer, Daniel and Virella stood side by side. He showed her how the scanning equipment functioned, pointing out readouts on a holo display that flickered with data. Occasionally, she would close her eyes to sense the wildlife below, describing her empathic impressions with poetic clarity. In those moments, Daniel marveled at the synergy of their skills, science coupled with empathic communion. The Celarians with them watched the pair with interest, some exchanging knowing smiles. It was not lost on anyone that the princess and the human scientist shared a connection that transcended the ordinary. Finally, the skimmers descended into a more remote region of the jungle, an area seldom visited even by Celarians. Tangled vines blanketed the land, and the canopy overhead allowed only dappled sunlight to filter through. Here, the group established a small base camp. Daniel and his team erected portable scanning towers that emitted gentle pulses across multiple wavelengths. With these, they hoped to detect dark talon nests, trace their migratory patterns, and perhaps learn what had driven them to such aggressive behavior. Despite the presence of armed guards, a silent tension settled over the camp. Memories of the chase and the near-fatal encounter still haunted Virella, but she steeled herself, determined to face any danger. Over the next several days, the combined research efforts yielded promising results, uncovering patterns in the Dark Talon's prowling routes and a possible link to diminishing resources. One evening, as the group relaxed by a soft fire, Daniel approached Virella. "I think we're on the verge of a breakthrough," he said, pointing to the latest scans on his holo display. The data suggests that the Dark Talons, once solitary apex predators, have been driven into packs because their prey species are disappearing. Something is altering the jungle's balance, forcing them to become more aggressive. Virella absorbed his words. Could it be a consequence of Celarian expansion, or perhaps an outside influence we do not yet understand? Daniel nodded, thoughtfully. It's possible. I've seen it on Earth when habitats shrink. Predatory animals become more confrontational, adapting in dangerous ways. If we can restore equilibrium, maybe we can prevent future attacks. Looking up at the towering silhouettes of ancient trees, their leaves outlined by moonlight, he felt a swell of determination. Virella rested a gentle hand on his shoulder, her empathic aura conveying gratitude. "We shall do whatever is necessary to protect our people, human and Celarian alike." Encouraged by their research, Daniel and Virella pressed deeper into the jungle's interior. On a warm afternoon, while the group scouted near a rocky ravine, distant roars punctured the humid air. At once, the guard captain ordered everyone into defensive positions. Daniel tried to maintain calm, adjusting his scanning frequency to locate the source of the disturbance. Suddenly, from the thick undergrowth, a band of Dark Talons emerged, 6 or 7 individuals, their cloaking flickering under Daniel's device, revealing scaled hides. With hungry eyes and snarling jaws, they encircled the expedition team. The Celarian guards brandished weapons that fired condensed pulses of empathic energy, designed to repel creatures without inflicting permanent harm. Daniel stood at Virella's side, every muscle tensed. In the frenzy that followed, pulses of light and hissing creatures wove a tableau of chaos. The Dark Talons attacked with savage speed, leaping onto fallen logs and thick branches, slashing at the guards. The empathic pulses forced some back, but others lunged forward unrelentingly, their advanced camouflage rolling across their bodies in shimmering waves. Daniel, remembering his rescue device, activated it. An electric surge spread across the clearing, momentarily destabilizing the creature's cloaking. Groaning in disorientation, the Dark Talons hissed. Virella, calling upon her own empathic powers, attempted to soothe their rage, but the creatures appeared maddened, almost as if some external force drove them beyond normal aggression. One guard fell, clawed by a particularly large beast. Another guard tried to pull him to safety. Daniel joined the fray, quickly adjusting the device's frequency again, intensifying its effects. The environment crackled, and the Dark Talons shrieked. Then, in an abrupt retreat, they withdrew, melting into the shadows. Silence descended, broken only by the labored breathing of the team. 2 guards were injured, though not gravely. That was more intense than before. Daniel panted, sweat trickling down his brow. They weren't just defending territory. It seemed like they were driven. Virella nodded, kneeling to help tend one of the wounded. There is a darkness around their thoughts I have never sensed before. It's as though something or someone has lit a fire of fury within them. That night, concern weighed heavily on the camp. The wounded guards rested inside med pods, while Daniel, Virella, and the remaining Celarians huddled over the scanning equipment, analyzing the data. They found traces of an unusual energy signature near the Dark Talon attack site, a faint but distinct waveform that conflicted with the planet's natural rhythms. Could it be the work of a rogue Celarian? One of the scientists asked. We have known exiles who dabble in forbidden energies. Virella frowned. If that is true, we must find and stop them. Their actions endanger not only the expedition, but the entire balance of Voralia Prime. Daniel exchanged a look with Virella. The starlight reflected in her eyes, resolute. Though neither of them spoke, the unspoken question bound them. Who would go to such lengths as to weaponize the Dark Talons? And why? Returning to Zatharine, the expedition shared their findings with King Mefares. Grave lines etched into his face as he listened. A rogue Celarian, or perhaps an outside infiltrator, sowing chaos. He mused aloud. I fear there may be more to this than meets the eye. If the Dark Talons are being manipulated, we must root out the threat before it engulfs our world. Daniel, exhausted from the journey, was about to head to his quarters when a commotion erupted in the palace's main hall. A group of Celarians in official attire confronted the king, their voices echoing in anger. Daniel hung back, trying not to intrude, but curiosity compelled him to listen. We cannot stand by while a stranger from Earth meddles in royal affairs, one of the Celarian nobles declared, his tone sharp. The covenant of Valrine is our tradition. Yes, but this union, should it even occur, risks polluting our lineage. The princess is too precious, too vital to risk on a whim. King Mefares held up a hand. Your concerns are heard, Lord Ruvaris, but do not mistake them for facts. Daniel Carter has proven his worth, and our daughter's safety and happiness stand above all else. If they choose this path, it shall be sanctified. The noble stiffened, lips pressed thin. And what if the princess refuses to carry on our pure line? Or if the human's presence leads to turmoil among our people? He leaned forward, voice dropping. Be warned, my king, that not all Celarians will accept a half-human heir. At those words, Daniel felt a pang in his chest. A swirl of conflicting emotions tore at him, fueling doubts he had tried to suppress. Was he truly fit to be part of Virella's life? Could he bridge such a vast cultural chasm? He turned to leave, but found Virella standing beside him, having heard the altercation. Their eyes met in a silent exchange of empathy and concern. She stepped forward, her voice clear. We live in an ever-changing galaxy. The future of Voralia Prime is not in isolation, but in unity. If we turn away from those who would stand by us, we risk stagnation, perhaps even destruction. I will decide my future, and I accept the covenant of Valrine on my own terms. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Lord Ruvaris bristled but did not press further, unwilling to openly defy the princess in the royal hall. King Mefares signaled for the palace guards, and the group of dissenters exited, though their displeasure remained palpable. In the aftermath, Daniel lingered in the corridor, thoughts chaotic. Virella approached, her expression soft with understanding. I am sorry you had to witness that, she said quietly. Political tensions run high among the nobility. Change is never easy. He nodded, swallowing hard. I knew there could be opposition, but hearing it like that, I just don't want to cause you or your people hardship. Virella placed her hand atop his. If there is hardship, we face it together. You did not ask for the covenant's conditions, and neither did I. But if we choose each other, we do so with open hearts, and with hope for a future that transcends fear. Her words were like a balm to the doubts plaguing him. He felt the warmth of her empathy, a quiet assurance that, whatever came next, they would confront it side by side. Amid courtly intrigue and preparations for a potential royal union, Daniel continued his research into the rogue energy signature discovered in the jungle. Working with the Celarian scholars, he triangulated possible sources of the anomalous readings. Their focus narrowed on a region known as the Gloom Weald, a place reputed to be haunted by unnatural shadows and swirling mists. Small scouting teams, guided by Daniel's data, investigated the area. One returned with disturbing news. They had found traces of advanced machinery, hidden amid the foliage, emitting pulses of energy identical to the one influencing the Dark Talons. The device bore no clear Celarian design. Suspicions arose that an outside faction sought to destabilize Voralia Prime. Some even whispered of an old rival empire that once clashed with the Celarians centuries ago. Determined to end the threat, King Mafaris authorized a covert mission to dismantle the machinery. Daniel volunteered at once, knowing his expertise could aid in understanding the device's function. Virella insisted on joining, her resolve unshaken by the dangers. Reluctantly, the king relented, dispatching a cadre of elite guardians. They set off in swift, silent crafts that evaded notice, each occupant determined to preserve the kingdom from the looming menace. Upon reaching the gloom weald, the atmosphere changed drastically. A blanket of mist smothered the ground, and twisted trees hung with vine like strands that dripped viscous sap. Even the ever-present chirping of insects faded to eerie silence. Daniel's scanner flickered with intense readings, pinpointing the hidden device in a sunken clearing, surrounded by brambles of blackened wood. They moved carefully, disembarking to traverse the swirling vapor. Virella's empathic senses flickered, picking up distant pulses of malice. Step by step, they approached a cage of twisted metal, from which hummed a pulsating energy field. Several rods jutted from the device, each bristling with sizzling arcs of purple light. Littered around it were remnants of small fauna, evidence of the machine's lethal reach. "This must be generating the psychic distortions that enrage the dark talons," Daniel whispered. "It's saturating the environment with chaotic frequencies." Suddenly, shadows shifted behind a gnarled trunk, and a figure emerged, a tall Celarian with jet-black hair and eyes that gleamed with cold intellect. He carried a twisted staff of obsidian like crystal. Several more figures appeared, clad in dark robes, forming a semicircle around Daniel's group. From their expressions of contempt, it was clear these were the saboteurs. Virella stepped forward. "Who are you? Why have you invaded our lands and tampered with our native creatures?" The dark-haired Celarian smirked. "Greetings, princess. My name is Ivalor. Though you may recall the family name once held honor among our people. I was exiled for daring to unlock powers the king forbade. Now I return, not to serve Voralia Prime, but to reshape it in my vision. This device harnesses energies from beyond our dimension, fueling my control over the dark talons. When I have proven the might of these creatures, the king and his antiquated traditions will bow before me, and you, dear princess, shall not live to see that day." His words were bitter, laced with resentment and ambition. The guardians tensed, weapons at the ready. Daniel gripped his scanner, adjusting settings for a possible disruption. He only hoped they could stop Ivalor before his twisted designs came to fruition. A sudden hush fell as Ivalor raised his staff, crackling with energy. The device behind him flared, sending arcs of purple lightning across the clearing. In the distance, roars echoed dark talons, drawn by the surge. They emerged from the mist, eyes crazed, scales flickering wildly. Virella, summoning every ounce of her empathic power, reached out with her mind to calm the raging beasts. But the device's chaotic pulses drowned out her gentle influence. The dark talons advanced, drooling with frenzy. Seeing no alternative, the Celarian guardians fired empathic blasts, while Daniel rushed to the machine, determined to shut it down. Ivalor lunged, staff raised to strike Daniel with a crackling beam. At that moment, Virella stepped between them, an aura of shimmering gold surrounding her. Ivalor's energy splashed against her empathic shield. She winced, struggling to maintain the barrier. Daniel hastened to the machine's controls, a jumbled array of alien technology fused with stolen Celarian parts. He keyed in override commands, searching for a way to disable it. The readouts spun in multiple languages, and arcs of purple lightning snapped at his fingers. Each misstep threatened to unleash a feedback surge. Sweat poured down his face, but he persisted. The circle of conflict escalated. Guardians battled the dark talons, blasts of empathic energy lighting the dark clearing in flashes of brilliance. Ivalor hurled bolts of raw force, hissing curses at Virella and the guardians who tried to stop him. In a dizzying clash of energies, a thunderous boom rocked the air, sending shockwaves through the clearing. Then, with a final desperate input, Daniel triggered a shutdown sequence. The device sputtered, sparks flying, and the arcs of purple light guttered out. A high-pitched whine pierced the night before the machine fell silent. As the disruptive signals faded, the dark talons recoiled, suddenly confused, no longer driven by unnatural frenzy. Some turned and fled, while others stood swaying, disoriented. Ivalor, eyes bulging with fury, screeched in protest, hurling a final blast toward Daniel. Virella intervened once more, golden light flaring. The rogue's energy collided with her shield and rebounded, striking Ivalor squarely in the chest. He collapsed, staff clattering away. The remaining robed figures, leaderless, tried to flee, but the guardians swiftly apprehended them, exhausted and trembling. Virella dropped to her knees, shoulders heaving. Daniel rushed to her side, wrapping an arm around her. The guardians secured the saboteurs, while others carefully dismantled the malicious device. In a single decisive moment, the hidden threat that had nearly ravaged Voralia Prime's jungles was quelled. Celebrations rang through Zatharine upon the news of Ivalor's downfall. King Mefaris thanked the expedition profusely, hosting a festival that lit the streets with vibrant bioluminescent patterns. Celarians danced on floating platforms, their music echoing across the moonlit canopy. Guests from allied worlds arrived, drawn by the spectacle and the significance of Voralia Prime's newfound alliance with humankind. Daniel, still breathless from the ordeal, found himself acclaimed a hero, lauded in Celarian songs for his courage. But his greatest honor awaited in a secluded glade, beneath a canopy of giant fronds that swayed gently in the starlight. There, King Mefaris extended his gratitude in the most profound way, by publicly announcing that the covenant of Valrine would at last be fulfilled. The palace courtyard glistened with luminescent flora, arranged in intricate patterns. Celarian artisans had draped ribbons of living vines and crystals from treetops, and glowing orbs floated on gentle currents, casting shifting hues upon the gathered crowd. In the center of the courtyard, near a gracefully carved dais, Daniel stood clad in formal attire robes gifted by Celarian tailors, embroidered with delicate filaments that shimmered with each breath. His heart pounded, equal parts excitement and trepidation. As he awaited the arrival of Princess Virella, she emerged from the palace with poise and grace, wearing a gown of woven starlight and forest hues, her silver hair braided with small glowing blossoms. The crystal circlet on her brow refracted the ambient light in soft rainbow flares. As she walked toward Daniel, their eyes met a silent conversation of warmth and devotion. The crowd hushed, transfixed by the tableau. King Mefaris began the ceremony, speaking in the melodic Celarian tongue, his words resonating through the courtyard. Occasionally, an attendant translated key phrases into Terran, ensuring Daniel grasped their meaning. The king extolled the bravery of both Daniel and Virella, praising their union as a bridge that promised to unify not just two hearts, but two peoples. Then came the vows. Virella spoke first. Daniel, from the day you saved my life, I have witnessed your unwavering courage and your boundless heart. You faced the darkest threats that haunted our jungles, not for glory, but for the preservation of life. You showed me that love can transcend worlds, that empathy is not limited by species or origin. Before my people and the living soul of Voralia Prime, I vow to stand beside you, in unity and compassion, wherever our shared path may lead. Daniel's throat tightened with emotion. He returned her gaze, recalling all the trials they had faced together. From the moment he first found her beset by dark talons, to unraveling the mystery of Ivalor's device. Virella, he began, voice trembling slightly. I came to this world as an outsider, armed only with scientific curiosity. But through you, I've discovered something far more profound: the power of connection. The miracle of two hearts finding each other across the vastness of space. I vow to respect your heritage, to cherish your people, and to protect this bond we share. I promise to walk with you, no matter what wonders or challenges the universe presents. A hush fell over the crowd. Even the swirling orbs seemed to pause, as though nature itself held its breath. Then, King Mepharis blessed the union, calling upon the ancient energies of Voralia Prime. A warm, golden glow descended around Daniel and Virella, igniting the crystalline blossoms woven into their attire. The crowd erupted in cheers, voices joining in a choir of celebration that resounded through the city. High overhead, the jungle canopy shimmered as bioluminescent blossoms opened in unison, a tribute to the bond now sealed. As they clasped hands, Daniel felt an overwhelming sense of peace, a realization that he had found a home in Virella's presence. She leaned in, and they shared their first kiss as partners before all of Celaria, a tender union that signaled a new era of harmony and understanding between humans and Celarians alike. In the days that followed, Daniel Carter and Princess Virella moved forward as beacons of unity, their story spreading far beyond Voralia Prime. At embassies and in diplomatic halls across the galaxy, humans and Celarians found fresh cause for collaboration. Projects materialized that once might have been deemed impossible: joint ventures in terraforming, ecological restoration, and cultural exchange. The newlyweds themselves divided their time between Earth and Voralia Prime, ensuring that each world grew more familiar with the other. On Earth, Virella discovered human literature and music, enthralled by the passionate expressions of a species that, though lacking in telepathic ability, conveyed deep emotion through art and song. On Voralia Prime, Daniel continued to refine his ecological scanning technology, sharing breakthroughs in synergy with Celarian empathic healing techniques, forging new approaches to preserving delicate ecosystems. Even the Dark Talons saw improvement. Freed from Ivalor's manipulations, they reverted to their naturally cautious, solitary behavior. Under Daniel's guidance, the Celarians established protected habitats that respected the creatures' domains while minimizing contact with populated areas. The once feared beasts became subjects of careful study, regarded with a balance of caution and respect. As the years passed, life in Zatharan flourished. The city's living architecture evolved, shaped by a new generation of Celarian artisans who drew inspiration from Terran design. The once skeptical nobles who opposed the union gradually softened, seeing the positive transformations that blossomed from interspecies cooperation. Some even praised the marriage, attributing the kingdom's prosperity to the synergy it represented. In time, a child was born to Daniel and Virella, a daughter who carried human resilience and Celarian empathy in equal measure. She bore the luminous eyes of her mother, the bright curiosity of her father, and a presence that bridged the two worlds. In her laughter echoed the song of an ever-evolving galaxy, a future unbounded by the fears of the past. King Mepharis, watching his grandchild, felt his heart swell with pride. The ancient traditions of Celaria had not been discarded, rather, they had grown, inclusive now of new possibilities. The covenant of Valrine had been fulfilled in spirit and letter alike, planting seeds of peace that would bloom for generations. And so, beneath the emerald canopy of Voralia Prime, amid the soft glow of living crystals and the gentle symphony of jungle life, Daniel and Virella's story came to embody hope and unity. Their bond, forged in peril and crowned with love, showed how even the greatest distances, cultural, planetary, or star-spanning, could be bridged by compassion and courage. And in that happy ending, the promise of tomorrow shimmered bright, a testament to the undeniable truth that hearts, when open and true, could rewrite destinies, weaving harmony from what once seemed impossibly far apart.